Hello, my name's Mrs. Tyler, and today we're going to do some biology GCSE revision. It's on dual and triple, and I've called it ecosystems, but it's really the start of Unit 7. It's lots of easy topics that you might remember, thinking about adaptations, food chains, competition, and dead easy. Today, it's all about drawing those animals. Let's get started. As usual, we're going to start with the title in the middle. I'm calling this Ecosystems. But like I said in the intro, it's really lots of little things about populations and factors that affect them. I'm going to divide this straight down the middle. And then each half is going to be divided into quarters. So again, I haven't put my title in the middle. So 4 equal spaces. This one's going to be called competition. This one's going to be called abiotic and biotic. This one's going to be called adaptations. And this last one is going to be called food chains. Let's start then up here with competition. Competition means that organisms are all after the same resources. They all need the same thing, so the same food, they all need shelter, and so they compete. And whoever's best at getting them is going to survive. So competition means organisms need the same resources. So they have to compete. I'm going to do plant competition here and animal competition here. All right, so we're going to draw a little plant. There's the stem. Here are the roots. And just 2 leaves. It's a short little plant. So the main resource that plants need, as you know, is light for photosynthesis. So plants with bigger leaves or taller plants are going to get more light. They also need space to grow. And they also need minerals out of the soil and water out of the soil to get in through the roots. So plants compete for light, space, minerals and water. Animals then, I'm going to just draw a little mouse. Animals also compete for water and space, but they need food, not light to photosynthesize and make glucose. They need to eat food and they need mates. And by mates, we need something of the same sex to reproduce with. All organisms then that are in competition are also therefore in interdependence. Or interdependent. All organisms depend on other species. And that might be for food, might be that you live in a tree, so another species provide your habitat. It might be that you need another species to spread the pollen, so insects or birds. Now, because all organisms are interdependent and all rely on each other for lots of things, it means that in a food web, when one organism decreases or increases, it affects the other organisms. So when one organism decreases, for example, hunting or disease, it affects the others. So, for example, in this interdependent simple food web, we've got grass, the producer at the bottom. We've got two primary consumers, a caterpillar and a shield bug. Shield bug is just a type of insect. And both the caterpillar and shield bug are eaten by birds. So the food web shows the energy going up from the producer to the primary consumers and from the primary consumers to the secondary consumer. Let's just draw a little shield bug. So they look like that. They literally look like they've got shields as backs. Let's say that something decreases the population of shield bugs. That means that the birds are going to eat more caterpillars. So not only does the shield bug population go down, the caterpillar population goes down. And if the shield bug and the caterpillar population goes down, the grass is going to go up because less of it is being eaten. On to abiotic and biotic factors then. Abiotic means non-living. And I don't just mean dead, I mean never alive. So it's things like light intensity, temperature, wind speed, minerals and pH in the soil, oxygen concentration, particularly in water-based ecosystems. So abiotic means the opposite of biotic. Biotic means living. Abiotic, therefore, means non-living. Let's have a look then at some of the biotic factors. So these are things like predators, pathogens, bacteria, remember, are living. Competition between different species and within the same species. And food availability. Let's have a look at an example then of competition. And we're going to look at an example of interspecific competition. Inter means in between. So interrail is when you used to go around different countries in Europe. So interspecific means between species. So interspecific competition. And the interspecific competition we're going to think about then is an example from the UK of the grey squirrel compared to the red squirrel. We're going to have a go now at drawing two squirrels. Let's start with the grey one. The grey one is substantially bigger than the red squirrel. So there's its face. Grey ones have got smaller, rounder ears than red ones. There's its back. There's its foot. There's its arm. There's its other foot. There's its tail. So this one's the grey squirrel. If you've got any pens, you could colour it in. And they are bigger. Let's draw then a red squirrel. They're considerably smaller. Their ears are a bit longer and they've got little tufts on the ends. So the red squirrels are smaller. So red squirrels are native to the UK, and when the grey squirrels were first introduced, they ate the same food and they had the same habitat, and so they were in direct competition with each other. So even though they were different species, they had the same food and the same habitat. On top of that, so the grey squirrel was bigger, so it meant that they got more of the food and took more of the habitats. Grey squirrels took more. On top of that, the grey squirrels carried a pathogen called squirrel pox, which is another biotic factor, pathogens. So greys carry a disease, but they don't get it. So it kills the red squirrels, but not grey. And these biotic factors, the fact that they ate the same food and a pathogen was introduced, meant that the red squirrels died out. There were no red squirrels left in lots of parts of the UK. And in fact, the small areas where there are still red squirrels, generally they disappear as soon as the grey squirrels arrive. So if the grey squirrels arrive, they generally outcompete the red squirrels, and all the red squirrels are dead, and it takes about 15 years. So the red squirrels die out. There's none left when the grey squirrels arrive due to interspecific competition. On to adaptations then. Adaptations, just draw a box around that one. Adaptations, slightly more complicated at GCSE than it was at Key Stage 3, but not much. There are three types of adaptation you need to know about. And the first one is the obvious one. We call them structural. And by that, we mean physical features. Like body shape, and colour. So you'd have done, in Key Stage 3, polar bears and camels as examples of structural adaptation. Today, I'm going to draw a whale. The only reason I'm drawing a whale is because it's a bit easier. So we're going to start and draw a blue whale. Long body, dorsal fin. It's fairly near the back. This whale's got a really big, wide mouth to take big gulps of water with krill in it. So the structural adaptations of whales is that they are a streamlined shape. And they have a big mouth with special hairs for teeth to filter out the krill, or this type of whale does. Called a baleen whale. Big mouth with hairs to filter krill. Krill are little prawn type things. They've also got thick blubber to keep them warm in the cold seas. So structural adaptations are things like body shape and size and colour. The next type of adaptation you need to know about then is a behavioural adaptation. And as the name suggests, this is how animals' behaviour allows them to survive. So, for example, lizards move into the sun or the shade to moderate their body temperature. Other animals migrate. That's a behaviour. I'm going to draw a lizard here. There's the lizard's head, neck, body, two back legs, so lizards sit out in the rocks to get the heat from the sun. And lastly, the type of adaptation that we can't see, so it tends to be processes or biochemistry happening inside animals, is called functional. So functional adaptations are biochemistry or processes inside animals. So for example, desert animals sweat less. and make less urine to reduce water loss. Last one then, nice easy food chains. We've been doing about this since primary. Let's quickly draw one out then. I'm going to start off with my plant. I'm going to draw some daisies. So you know that plants use photosynthesis to make glucose. And because of that, we call them producers, because they produce their own food from photosynthesis. Plants are then eaten by animals. I'm going to draw a rabbit. Here's my rabbit. Rabbits then eat daisies, so they are primary consumers. They are the first eaters. So primary means first, consumer means eaters. The arrow then always shows the direction of energy. So energy comes from the sun, it's gathered by chlorophyll in the leaves to make glucose, and the rabbit then eats that glucose and it turns it into rabbit cells. The rabbit then could be eaten by the next stage of a food chain, which is going to be a fox. Let's just draw the fox's face. They've got quite long noses. I think they've got longer legs than that, but never mind. So the fox eats the rabbit, so it's called a secondary consumer. So we've got Daisy, rabbit, and fox. So in a food chain then, we can get fluctuations in the populations, and we can get what we call a predator-prey cycle. So we're going to draw a graph of the number of foxes and rabbits. Right, so I'm just going to put number up the side. I'm going to put time along the bottom. And this is usually in years, because it takes a long time for populations of rabbits to increase and foxes to increase. So the solid line is going to be the rabbits. Let's say it's been a good summer, there's lots of food, the rabbits have more babies, and more babies survive because there's more food. And the dotted line is going to be the foxes. There'll be far fewer foxes, okay, because energy is lost along a food chain. I'm going to talk about that in my biomass video. So as the rabbits increase, there'll be a slight time delay, but then the foxes will start to increase. As the foxes start to increase, it means that the rabbits start to decrease. And as the rabbits start to decrease, the foxes start to decrease. And as the foxes start to decrease, the rabbits increase again. So what you get is this slight time delay in the increases and decreases of the predator and prey populations. The rabbit is the prey, and the fox is the predator. So we said at first the rabbit population increase, let's say it's been a nice warm summer, lots of light, so there's been more grass growing. Increase in light leads to an increase in grass, which leads to an increase in rabbits surviving because they've got more food. If the rabbits increase, it means the foxes are going to increase. Increase in rabbits leads to an increase in foxes because there's more food. And then as the foxes increase, they are going to eat the rabbits, so the rabbits are going to decrease. The increase in foxes leads to a decrease in rabbits because they're being eaten by the foxes. And this is called a predator-prey cycle and shows the fluctuations of populations through food chains. All right, that's it for this time. Well done, you know your job. Read, cover, recite, and then have a go at some exam questions. And I'll see you next time.